What makes hemp intoxicating? Virginia law is not actually about how strong a product feels, and that usually surprises people. Most people assume intoxication is a chemistry question. THC percentage in, impairment out. Simple. But under Virginia law, that assumption is, well, incomplete. And that misunderstanding is exactly where legal risk begins. Here's the thing. Two products can have the same lab numbers, the same labeling, even the same ingredients, and only one is considered illegal. That is not a mistake. That is how the law is structured. And if you sell, regulate, enforce, or even just purchase hemp-derived products in Virginia, this matters more than most people realize. Here are some legal facts and misconceptions. A common belief is that if a hemp product tests under the federal THC limit, it cannot be intoxicating under Virginia law. That belief feels logical. It feels safe. But it is wrong. Virginia does not rely solely on federal hemp definitions when evaluating intoxication. More accurately, Virginia layers its own statutory interpretation, enforcement discretion, and public safety standards on top of federal law. And that's where confusion starts. Welcome to Norfolk City Cannabis Hub. My role here is to explain Virginia cannabis and hemp law from a compliance-first perspective. This video is educational only. It does not promote use, sale, cultivation, or consumption of cannabis or hemp products. We are not discussing how to make products, where to buy them, or how to avoid enforcement. What we are covering is how Virginia legally determines whether a hemp product is intoxicating, why that standard exists, and how it is applied in real-world enforcement. We will focus on statutes, regulatory interpretation, and enforcement realities, especially as they affect Norfolk and Hampton Roads. Here's the context. Virginia's hemp framework did not evolve in a vacuum. It developed alongside federal hemp legalization, medical cannabis expansion, and ongoing concerns about public impairment. Originally, hemp regulation focused on agriculture and fiber. Later, it shifted toward cannabinoids, extracts, and consumer products. That shift happened faster than most regulatory systems could adapt. As a result, Virginia lawmakers were confronted with a new question. How do you regulate products that are legally hemp by percentage, but functionally intoxicating by effect? And that question still does not have a single clean answer. Here's the legal explanation. What makes hemp intoxicating? Virginia law turns on effect, not just content. Virginia statutes and regulatory guidance focus on whether a product is capable of producing intoxication or impairment in an ordinary consumer. This assessment can involve, but is not limited to, THC concentration. Let me rephrase that. A lab report alone does not determine legality. Virginia regulators may consider formulation, delivery method, bioavailability, marketing claims, and real-world use patterns. More accurately, they evaluate whether the product functions like an intoxicant. This is why Delta variants, isomers, and chemically altered cannabinoids raise red flags even when labeled as hemp. In the next section of this video we are going to talk about how enforcement works, and who this affects, why this matters, and provide you with a scenario and question you might want answered. Let's talk about how enforcement works. Enforcement authority in Virginia is shared. State agencies, local law enforcement, and sometimes local governments all play a role. Investigations often begin with complaints. Sometimes from consumers. Sometimes from competitors. Sometimes from public safety concerns. Lab reports may be reviewed, but they are not always determinative. Officers and regulators are permitted to consider observed effects, packaging, dosage instructions, and point-of-sale context. And this is important. Enforcement decisions are not always uniform across jurisdictions. Who this affects? This affects the consumers. Consumers may unknowingly purchase products that are later deemed intoxicating under Virginia law. This creates legal uncertainty and public safety concerns. This affects the retailers. Retailers face licensing risk, seizure risk, and potential criminal exposure even when relying on supplier lab reports. Local governments. Cities like Norfolk must balance zoning, enforcement resources, and public complaints without clear statewide uniformity. We know that unregulated intoxicating hemp products can undermine Virginia's tightly controlled medical cannabis system. Each group is affected differently, but all are impacted by ambiguity. So, let's look at why this matters. Public safety is the stated justification. Regulatory clarity is the practical challenge. Unclear standards increase enforcement discretion, legal risk, and financial instability. Long-term, this uncertainty pressures lawmakers to revisit statutory definitions. And that matters for everyone involved. Here's a scenario. Imagine a Norfolk retailer selling a hemp-derived edible. It tests under the federal THC limit. Packaging suggests relaxation, calm, and mood elevation. A consumer reports impairment. An investigation follows. Outcome 1. Regulators determine the product is intoxicating under Virginia law despite compliant lab numbers. Product is removed. Alternate outcome. Clearer labeling, formulation, and distribution context result in no enforcement action. Same chemistry. Different outcome. Here's an additional scenario. Let's walk through another realistic scenario, because this one tends to catch people off guard. A local zoning office in Hampton Roads receives complaints. Not about crime. Not about sales. But about people leaving a hemp retailer appearing impaired. No arrests. No citations. Just observations. State regulators review the situation. Lab reports show the product qualifies as hemp by percentage. But the dosage, delivery method, and real-world effects suggest intoxication. Here's the thing. Under Virginia law, enforcement can focus on how a product functions, not just how it tests. The result. The product is removed from shelves. No criminal charges are filed. But the retailer still absorbs financial and operational risk. Same lab numbers. Different legal outcome. So, what to watch next? A logical next topic is how Virginia distinguishes hemp retail from medical cannabis distribution. Understanding that boundary explains many enforcement decisions, or medical cannabis versus retail hemp in Virginia explained. One of our most recent and popular video is on Virginia recreational cannabis sales bill explained. Here's a question to think about. Should Virginia define intoxication by chemical threshold alone, or by real-world effect? Put your thoughts in the comments. Keep it respectful and law-focused. So, we've learned that what makes hemp intoxicating Virginia law is not a simple formula. It is a layered legal standard shaped by public safety, enforcement discretion, and evolving policy. If you value clear, Virginia-specific legal analysis, please like, comment, and subscribe. For deeper discussion, read the full breakdown and join the Norfolk City Cannabis Community.